At first, I'd just like to ask you what kind of how long have you known Fred?
40 years. Fred and I have been friends for 40 years. And my thought on Fred, when I knew I was talking about Fred, and I couldn't remember his leadership Jacksonville or who it was, but I was going to think about Fred. And my first thoughts were that the community, all of us, are positive about Fred Schultz, because there is no doubt about his intelligence or his integrity. There is no doubt about his commitment to community and commitment to our country. And there is no doubt about his love for family and friends. And he's an extraordinary individual. He's a selfless leader who loves Jacksonville and the people he wants to serve. That's just a start. I got a lot of other thoughts about him. But, you know, I'm sure Preston or anybody would say they're proud to be Fred's friend. He's an exceptional human being. No one is more responsible for the creation of Leadership Jacksonville than Fred was through his chairmanship of the Amelia Island Conference. That was a turning point for many things in Jacksonville. You can name organizations that developed out of that conference, and they've all been positive for Jacksonville. And the result has been a community that is better than it would have been without it. Fred has been around education all his public life. He knows that the difference between those people who have good lives and not so good lives is education. The complaints we hear about the rich and the poor and the divide is really about education. We think about crime and no crime. It's education. When all of this comes around, an enlightened community will be a better community. And Fred has committed himself to that.
What kind of friend has he been to you? What kind of friend has Fred been to you?
Fred and I have been friends for 40 years. The best experiences we've had together have been on our many trips. Fred and Nancy and Carol and I have traveled some beautiful places together. We've been to Africa. We've been to Ireland and England, Scotland and England. I can't think of I won't get into that, but we've traveled the earth together, and they're wonderful companions and guides. And interesting, I'll tell you this is not for this, but an interesting thing about Fred is that when we're traveling with Fred, he knows everything. You know, he's intelligent. He sees a plant beside the road in a foreign land, he knows what the plant is. We go through an interesting little town, he knows the history of the town. Well, that's been going on for years with Fred and me. I learned a lot from him. But on one trip, I picked out one little town that we were going through, and I Googled it, and I studied it, and I found out a lot about this little town. And when we came into this town, I said, Fred, what do you know about this place? Well, this is just I don't know. And I said, I bet you it dates back to the 11th century. And the schools that were here early on, they all closed in the 17th century. And the population is mainly from the district north of here. And I told him and he could not believe that I would know anything when he knows everything. And so that was the only upmanship I ever had on Fred.
I love that. That's great.
Isn't that funny?
I love that. You know, and I may use that, Bob.
Well, I tell you what, Fred amazes anybody who's with him very much by what he knows. He is so intelligent, and he's just got a keen mind, and that is true. I don't care where we were or what people we were talking about or the flowers or the birds that were growing or the birds that were flying. He knew all about them. And and my wife's pretty good at these things, but not as good as Fred.
Can you tell me about his heart? Tell me about what kind of a heart that man
Fred cares about people, really cares about people. And he knows that he was to the manner born, and that it is his obligation to share with those who have less. When he was in the legislature, when he was in his community life, and every place he went, he was committed to improving the lives of those people around. And it wasn't a part-time job with Fred. Caring for others is a part of his life. And that led him into education, because in education, he could see how his efforts would be rewarded by having a better educated, trained community where people could work and people could make a living. And that was important to Fred, very important to Fred. We all see the problems that attend those who are not schooled, and that was intolerable to Fred.
Why?
Well, Fred he has high ideals. He has high ideals, and I think he really cares for the well-being of everyone, and to see that everyone has a chance to do better. And seeing a better community was something that would please him very much. Incidentally, along that line, Fred was so sick. Fred was so sick. And he's had about 5 years that he wasn't sure he was going to have. But they've been 5 great years. Fred and I are exactly the same age. And I've learned a lot from Fred. If you're around Fred, you learn a lot. And he has had an impact on my life. When he was president of the Chamber of Commerce, or chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, I followed him a couple of years. But I tried to use him as my role model. When he was doing good things for other community organizations, I thought of Fred and the time and money and effort that he was giving back to our community. And he's a role model. I'm so grateful for what he's done at St. Vincent's. His family's name's been important at St. Vincent's for 2 generations, now going into the 3rd generation. But Fred cares about helping people. And what a nice thing that is to say about a person. With all his honors and all the life he's lived, he cares for everybody, and the smallest guy will get the same treatment from Fred as the highest guy. He's that kind of person. He doesn't separate himself from the rest of us.
That's great.
Everybody knows that he's intelligent, but I'd like for you to know about his integrity. He's as honest and decent as they come. The second thing, everybody knows that he loves his wife, Nancy. But most people don't know how much he cares for his friends and for the other people in his family, because they're great too, and I know he loves them. The next thing I would think about Fred that other people don't know is that, he's a good golfer. He's been a great tennis player. He's a world traveler. He's greeted by the highest people in government around the world wherever he goes. So he's fun for me to travel with. Meet a lot of nice people that way. There's nothing more interesting than spending a few hours with Fred. And isn't it nice for all of us that know him? Mm-hmm. Well, leadership starts with commitment and grows with courage. And Fred, when he takes a job, he's not just taking a title, he's taking the responsibility that goes with it and makes his commitment. A lot of people do these things and don't have the courage to follow through, because in any leadership position, you have to do what's right and what's needed, and that requires courage. Fred's got the courage not just to do the popular thing, but to do what has to be done. And that's his style. Commitment and courage. Good combination. Good leadership. I've only known Fred for 40 years, from consolidation till now. And in that period of time, there have been some real community leaders. But nobody stands higher than Fred. Fred has been a leader for my generation. And I'm not going to tell you how old that is, but our generation's getting up there, and during all this period, for our generation, Fred has been a leader that we've all enjoyed being with and look up to. He's a wonderful role model.
What do you think his legacy to the future of Jacksonville will be?
Well, I hope that in the future people will look back and remember Fred's leadership in many important community goals, a leader in our community. I hope that they look back upon Fred as a leader in our community and take hold of this commitment of his to education. He's been worried and working on education improvements for 40 years. And even with that 40 years behind us, we still have a long way to go. And we've got to pick up, and the people after us have to pick up on that commitment, because his legacy will be closing the gap between the people who have it and the people who aren't getting it. And nothing would make him happier than to see a community where people have all had this opportunity and taken advantage of it. And our city needs it. Our country needs it so much that don't we wish we had 40 more years of Fred being involved in this? I do.
Yep.